Welcome back, guys. Today we are going to look at the consequences of imperialism, specifically European imperialism in Africa. We're going to look at two specific examples that are relevant, relatively close to today. So I'm going to do this in two different colors. Like I always, you don't have to do them in two different colors, but for me, it helps organize that one goes to one goes to the other. All right, so beginning with consequence number one, we are going to look at Rwanda. Rwanda, which is a country in Africa, and what happened in Rwanda as a result of the imperialism that took place there. All right, so looking at Rwanda first, Rwanda is imperialized, which again is a bigger country going into a smaller country, by Belgium. Belgium is the larger European country that goes into the smaller country of Rwanda. And Rwanda is one of those countries that, as a result of the Berlin Conference, which we talked about in a previous video, has a bunch of different tribes that are now kind of placed within this country and forced to live together. But specifically, there are two major ones, those being the Hutu people and the Tutsi people. Now, these two groups had lived together and shared a culture that were similar. They did have a similar culture. However, when it came to Belgium imperialism, the Tutsi people were the clear favorites. They were the favorites of the Belgium. The Belgianese people, the Belgian Europeans believed that the Tutsi were more advanced and closer to being European-like. And therefore, they were the favorites between the two. However, the Hutu people had the larger population. They had more people. They had the greater number of people, and they shared similar cultures, like I said, which is why it was awkward and strange to them that the Tutsi were often treated different. And so the proof of that favoritism is seen that when Belgium brings new weapons, new European weapons, new shiny new weapons, and they give them to the Tutsi. But when the Hutu are asked, or when the Hutu people ask for them, they are not given to the Hutu people. And this kind of leads the Hutus to question why. Why is it this way? Well, when, as a result of the favoritism and the better treatment, when the Belgians leave, the Tutsi people are better set up to be in charge. They've worked closer with the Belgian people before they left. They have more intel. They have more stuff. They're in just better position to be in charge. And so when the Belgian people leave, the Tutsi are in charge. Well, then comes 1994. The grand scheme of the history of the world is not that long. In 1994, and playing, and you're about to see my absolutely terrible drawing skills. A plane It's shot down. It's shot down. And this plane was carrying the president, the Tutsi president. The Tutsi president is inside. And once that plane is shot down and the leader of the not only the Tutsis but of Rwanda in general, once that plane goes down, the Hutu people believe this is their chance. They believe that this is their chance to take over. Because the government, and specifically the Tutsis, are in a time of crisis. So the Hutus believe this is their time to take over, and they start a genocide. They begin a genocide that results and the result of that genocide is the Tutsi deaths. Tutsi deaths that equate to 800,000 that we know of. 800,000 that we know of, that we can confirm, but there are mass graves that potentially have not been uncovered yet. And these are done in very horrible ways. Just inconceivable deaths. And that is the majority of these deaths are done via machete, or club, or a club. So the people are chopped up to death via machete or clubbed and beaten to death to the tune of 800,000. And again, this is all because two groups of people that initially had their own separate, what we would call a country, are forced to come together. They're forced to live together. Belgium, and it's fine. Everything works fine as long as Belgium is there, because Belgium is in charge and Belgium runs the government. Well, Belgium starts to pick a favorite. And when Belgium leaves, that favorite is more set up to run the country. But now you got two groups that are, the last time a European country was not in charge, ran themselves. And now one has to concede to the other. And the one that concedes is actually the majority. And so a plane is shot down in 1994 that is carrying the Tutsi president. The Hutus believes this is their chance. This is their time to take over. They are the majority. They have more people, and they go through and start killing Tutsi individuals simply because they are Tutsi individuals, to the tune of 800,000 people. And arguably this ties back to imperialism, because arguably had Europe never showed up in Africa, maybe we avoid this entire genocide. Maybe the Hutus have their own countries, the Tutsis have their own country, and there's no war and fighting going on. But once Belgium had gotten everything out of Rwanda that they wanted, they leave. They kind of force this group to fend for themselves, and you got two groups that are fighting over power. We're going to go on. We're going to move to this side now, and we're going to look at our second African country that has some similar issues, and that is Sudan. Sudan, another country that faces just absolutely horrible consequences of European imperialism. And Sudan, maybe not Sudan as a whole, more a region of Sudan, which is called Darfur. Uh, I'm going to try and draw the. So this is a poorly drawn depiction of Sudan, but you have this region right here on the western part of Sudan known as Darfur. And Darfur is where you see a lot of the consequence of European imperialism. Well, at the time that Sudan is imperialized, it is imperialized by the British. The British are the ones that have gone in and imperialized this country in Africa. They've gone in, they've imperialized, well, much like Rwanda, when it comes time in the league, you got a bunch of people that, a bunch of tribes that initially had their own control and own regions to live in that now have to live together and have to, one has to concede power to the other. And in 2003, in Darfur, you see a genocide very similar to the one in Rwanda, where a death toll, except this genocide is just people. And it's because you have one group that's fighting for power, and that death toll equals, that we know of, around 300,000. So you got 300,000 deaths that we know of, but you also have buildings and towns that are being burnt, set ablaze. Millions of buildings and homes are destroyed. So these are just those that are killed. The 300,000 are just those that are killed. The impact of this is felt by millions because as a result of either people's homes and towns being killed, you do have refugees. These are people that are leaving. They're trying to get out. They're trying to run away. And these refugees, I can add that E in there, equal, again, that we know of, 2.6 million. 2.6 million people are forced to leave their country, their home, where they live, because of a group that, again, initially had their own control and power prior to the British showing up, and it was this Darfur region. Known, it's an armed rebel group known as the Janjaweed people. The Janjaweed are a terrorist organization or a terrorist group. And using terrorism, or through terrorism, they were seeking to control where there were shortages in, or they seek to control water, the water supply, because there was a shortage, and farmland, specifically, again, in the Darfur region. And so, because there's a shortage of those in this region, there's a shortage of water, there's a shortage of controllable farmland, and they also do not allow the Red Cross, which is an international organization, that tries to help and give humanitarian aid to all countries. It's not even just specific ones, but they do not allow the Red Cross in this region. The Janjaweed terrorist group does not. And meanwhile, while all of this is going on, the Sudanese government, the leaders, the presidents, the government, the Sudanese leaders are looking the other way. They're allowing this to go on. They're allowing this to go on by looking the other way. And they do this because the Janjaweed people have agreed to stay in Darfur and leave the rest of Sudan alone as long as the Sudanese government does not get involved. And so the looking the other way by the Sudanese government is also why you see the Red Cross unable to get involved, unable to provide aid to these 2.6 million refugees. And so again, and that's again because the Sudanese leaders want to stay in charge. They want to remain in charge. And they've been able to obtain this power because the imperialistic Europeans have left. And so you have here two, not that long ago, consequences, both of which were genocides caused by European imperialism in Africa and forcing these groups that did not previously live together to all of a sudden live together and without rule. Once Great Britain got what they wanted, once Belgium got what they wanted, they just left. They just left and left these groups to fend for themselves. And the consequences of that are millions of people being affected. And again, this is as soon as 2003. So it's 2020, it's 17 years ago. Not that long ago that this was still going on. But we're going to stop here. You do have some articles to read about these genocides, what exactly happened, what exactly is going on. Reach out to me if you have questions regarding the assignment. And as always, have yourself a great day.